9. By my count, 14 bandits milled around 3 carts, picking at the goods, snatching up handfuls, then dropping them into the saddlebags on their horses. More enemies than the vendor had seen, which supported our suspicions. But they'd come out to pilfer the goods too soon. Gotten greedy. They wore half-plate armor with chain segments to accommodate for gaps, but the design was intentional. The uniformity of the gear displaced any lingering idea these were bandits. They were soldiers. An old movie line resonated in my head. "It's a trap!" A patch of high pines, thick oaks, and a couple strange trees I couldn't analyze due to my low botany skill rank sat just up a rise to the south of the looters. Although out of range from Machini's boomerangs, Amelia's arrows could reach 70 yards due to an increase when she reached level 40. I didn't know how far Tsumi could fire a short bow with accuracy, but we stationed her with the rest of the ranged group for buffs. And buff them she did.
Tsumi Wilsey plays Song of the Archer. Accuracy up. Amelia Horn receives Song of the Archer, plus 25% accuracy. Machini Share receives Song of the Archer, plus 18% accuracy. Tsumi Wilsey receives Song of the Archer, plus 15% accuracy.
The soldiers were beyond analysis range. Maybe that was intentional too. A military outfit with a smart leader would keep us in the dark until the last minute, and since NPCs and Enora had the same interfaces and shared my understanding of the mechanics, hell, they likely knew more than I. It wasn't a stretch to conclude their strategies would account for them, but they hadn't counted on Giles. The rogue moved among them in the typical crouch he used while in stealth mode, and I grinned while watching him slide daggers from their sheaths, pluck potions from their pockets. It was like he enjoyed this shit, but he'd never admit it. That there was a practical reason for him to steal the items to limit their contingencies was undeniable. My interface popped open, and the map appeared once again. Markers popped up with numbers next to them to represent the levels of the soldiers, all between levels 40 and 42. Like a military outfit who train and level together. Specialists. A unit. Destiny and I lay on our bellies to the north. Although I'd learned stealth naturally in the dark wood and could engage it at any time, my rank was too low to risk the close quarters of which Giles was capable, but I still used it while prone.
When we've dealt with these scum, we need to talk about Priya. I do not understand why.
It was like she didn't believe I loved the mother of my child. Her persistence tested my patience. Please focus on the task at hand. We will talk before we retire for the day. There, Giles is signaling.
Fine.
She crawled ahead on her belly, and I followed. The ground was frigid and hard, and Destini's fiery hair blew wildly in the easterly wind. I often forgot how the developers, or the AI, had replicated biological responses to stimuli, but the violent shiver sending a burst of warmth down my spine served as a vivid reminder.
Party chat. Giles.
Now! The elf swung a hand overhead, then a projectile sailed high from the thicket in the distant south. A blue glow surrounded it, not because of any added magical effect, but because it allowed party members to track incoming attacks. The arrow drifted wide to the east by my estimation, but it wobbled when the wind shoved it and sailed back toward center before lodging itself in the leg of one of the supposed bandits. Not a critical hit, not a mortal wound, but from that distance in a stiff breeze, not to mention the nausea, headache, and fatigue of res sickness, I couldn't help but be in awe at Amelia's ranged combat accuracy. Between her and Giles, I found myself wanting to train with the elves. The soldier's chin rose skyward, and I assume he howled, but the wind drowned it out. His cohorts circled around him, facing in every direction, another indicator they were trained. Destiny charged, and I followed, scanning the enemy troops. One soldier hesitated beside the cart with an armload of goods, and his separation from the formation got my cogs grinding.
Party chat. Gemini.
I want at least one alive.
Giles.
Very well. My elven mentor's stealth broke when he clubbed the injured soldier on the crown of his skull with the hilt of one dagger. By the time the men in the circle turned to respond, Giles had vanished again.
Party chat. Gemini.
He'll do. Avoid the one with the arrow in his knee. Although I pumped my legs as fast as they'd carry me over the flat, frozen prairie, Destiny left me in her dust. She howled a war cry, and text indicators popped above the heads of the remaining soldiers.
Taunt, 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 taunt. Taunt resisted.
All but one turned to charge her. Another glowing projectile pierced one of their necks, dropping him.
Amelia Horn used drilling shot 3. Critical hit. Unknown bandit. Minus 192 HP. Minus 51 HP. Bleed. Minus 48 HP. Bleed. Minus 46 HP. Bleed.
A burst of speed brought Amelia into my view as I closed in on the crowd surrounding my tank.
Amelia Horn casts Cheetah.
Tsumi and Machini fell behind the elven speedster, but as soon as the former was in range, she blew a melodic scale into a flute.
Tsumi plays Ballad of the Mongoose. Plus 5% attack speed. Plus 2% chance to evade melee attacks.
Both swords drawn, I shouted, "Tenka Seru!" So they burst into flames, because I fucking loved fire. I didn't technically have to use the verbal command anymore, but figured it might serve as a distraction, if only for a moment. It might even intimidate someone. The crew surrounding Destiny pushed in, forming a tighter circle. Despite her constant motion, 2 standing behind her landed blows, but Shoreen zoomed overhead and dropped her healing funnel onto my tank to give her a burst heal while adding a healing over time spell to boot. The 2% increased chance to dodge from our new bard companion undoubtedly helped keep the rest at bay. I brought my sword around to my left, dipped it low, then brought it up in a hard slice that cut through the chain covering one enemy's lower back. The motion also brought a bonus effect.
Inazuma.
A bolt of lightning zipped from the tip and tagged another enemy right in his ugly face. He blew backward, tipped over his own feet, then adopted an empty gaze from the stun effect. Before I could rush in to finish him, another enemy broke off and swung a rapier in my direction. I parried, kicked him in the gut, then spun to bring the blade in my dominant hand around. A seam opened from one side of his neck to the other as I sliced through his Adam's apple. A lucky shot, but at least he was done. He dropped to both knees. I sought out my previous target. His eyelids fluttered before I could get to him, but when he rose, Destiny taunted again, and his ire was drawn to her. I didn't know how she could fight with so many attackers surrounding her, but I was neither agile nor a tank. She was a badass, and I just accepted I was the luckiest bastard in Enora. Except for the whole Priya thing. A wave of annoyance fueled my will to shove the thought away. I raised my arm to strike another enemy, and a burst of pain rippled through my side. A soldier I hadn't noticed sliced into my flesh. Red letters flashed in my field of vision.
Unknown bandit uses cross slash. Hit. Minus 145 HP. Minus 44 HP. Bleed. Minus 40 HP. Bleed.
I pivoted just in time to block his next strike with my offhand weapon, but the pain tearing through my waist stifled my main hand's attack when I brought the katana around. He easily parried, then drew his rapier to one side, poised to run me through. I dropped onto my backside, then kicked his shin with the heel of one boot. Thrown off balance, he tumbled forward and landed on me. At close range, I couldn't muster a sword strike, so I dropped the katana from my left hand, then punched him in the jaw.
Minus 44 HP. Bleed. Minus 45 HP. Bleed.
A golden flash surrounded me, and a warming sensation coursed into the wound, then across my torso. Not a second later, a blue ethereal shield surrounded me.
Liatra casts Flash Heal 3. Shoreen casts Holy Shield.
My enemy's chin dropped. I met the expression with a grin. Sucks, doesn't it? I cocked my fist, and when the bandit dipped his head toward my chest to avoid the blow, I brought my other hand around, pressed the blade to the back of his neck, grasped the dull side, then shoved the edge deep and severed his spine. Talk about a mortal wound. Blood poured, and I threw him off before it could trail down into my clothing. Not that it wouldn't vanish later, but I didn't want it distracting me during combat. But that concern proved short-lived when Giles decided to enforce his will.
Giles executes Shadow Dash. Stealth cooldown removed. Critical hit. Mortal wound. Mortal wound. Mortal wound. Mortal wound. Mortal wound. Mortal wound. Mortal wound.
His ghostly image zipped around the circle surrounding Destiny, and although 4 of the soldiers had broken off to surge toward the ranged group, the rest learned a nasty lesson. Giles Renard was a cold-blooded killer. Amelia drew her one-handed crossbow, then sent a bolt into the forehead of one attacker, while Machini hurled a bladed boomerang with such ferocity it sliced through the center of another's ear and lodged there. She drew the other as Tsumi, who'd hustled off to one side to maintain a safer proximity, strummed the lute she'd pulled off her back and played something called Crushing Timpani. The last two attackers slapped their palms to their temples, then dropped to their knees.
Unknown bandit is disarmed. Unknown bandit is stunned. Unknown bandit is disarmed. Unknown bandit is stunned.
My team formed a circle of its own to press in on the final two, but I raised one fist to stop the attack. Several nodded as the group stopped its progression. Then an arrow whipped in and sliced through the lone female's temple and killed her. I wheeled to find Tsumi readying another arrow. I showed her one palm. For future reference, a raised fist means halt. I'll break down the hand signals for you later. She lowered her gaze.
Oops.
Destiny dragged the attacker we'd rendered unconscious to the center of our circle, then dropped him next to his compatriot with no fanfare. Since he stood on his knees, I raised one boot, then shoved his chest, so he fell onto his backside. Giles, feel free to do the honors.
Of course, Shenhua.
The man's head twisted.
So, you're him?
No one needed more clarity than that, so I nodded. Yeah, I'm him. Giles knelt before the bandit.
The question is, who are you, friend?
Well, I'm not your friend, traitor.
Spare me your protestations and tell me why you're here, then maybe you'll return to your people unharmed.
He set one arm across his knee and let the dagger it grasped hang limp.
You just killed everyone in your sight.
He dropped his chin, then cocked it toward the unconscious one.
Except for him.
Destiny stepped forward, raised her sword, then shoved it through the sleeping man's back. Tsumi cocked her eyebrow yet again. Giles's eyelids dropped to half-mast as he shook his head in disapproval. My expression stayed stony. I'd give it to the Michonne. We'd had a hell of a time of late. Giles leaned in.
Make this quick, or the Michonne might steal the light from your world.
While he might not have approved, the Elven Prince knew how to use a situation to meet his ends.
Fine. I work for the Council of Elders.
He paused, his gaze flitting from each of us to the next. When we didn't respond, he clarified.
In Trowsby.
Giles twirled the dagger, maybe to remind him it was there.
We know who the Council of Elders are. I wonder if you do me the honor of taking them a message. Would they see you? Like I said, they sent us. Good. Tell them to walk out the southern gate of their fine city and surrender to Commander Trian Renard within 2 days' time, or face the consequences.
What?
The man chortled, but it didn't come off as genuine.
You think we don't know about your army forming to the south? Huh. We've already walked right by you without notice.
My head drew back, but I suppressed a response. Giles had it under control.
Do you care to elaborate?
The man cleared his throat, and this time his gaze darted everywhere but at my people. I concluded it was the expression of someone who realized he'd said more than he should have.
No. You're going to kill me now?
Giles stood.
No.
In that case, the woman over there is still breathing.
He stabbed the air with one finger, and I followed the line to see a sprawled figure in gray robes with a tattered headscarf. Her hand twitched, so the soldier hadn't been lying. 2 other figures, both male, didn't budge, and I knew we hadn't dropped them. Liatra, go help her. Analyze first to make sure he isn't screwing with us. Our healer sped off. Moments later, the hum of mana being drawn from her pool and siphoned through the air in the form of a healing spell filled my ears. I stepped forward, then leaned down so my face was inches from the soldier. Let me get this right. Trowsby is so poorly informed that you assholes attacked a caravan of innocents just to draw us out here because you thought you could actually take us on?
Not at all.
He shook his head the slightest bit.
We've heard all about how you repelled Kamesh Empire and the governor's forces. Rumor has it you even had something to do with the removal of the dark entity in Warrington, and now that town thinks you're some kind of savior.
Then how does this tactic make sense? I gestured around at the pilfered carts and dead bodies. Although I stood poised with both swords clutched in my hands, the bastard laughed. A full-throated barrage of loud chortles. The nerve of the fucking guy.
We were just supposed to get you here.
He thrust a finger to the west.
They're going to finish the job.
On cue, thunder rolled from that direction. Every head swung as figures on horseback appeared from over the ridge. A similar sound in the east, the direction from which we'd come, was followed by another regiment's appearance.
Go ahead and kill me. The healers will resurrect all of us anyway.
Once I'd performed a head check to confirm the vendor was back on her feet, I opened my party chat.
Gemini.
Liatra, portal, now.
Liatra. No problem.
In answer to the bandits' no, the soldiers' last, I whipped my katana around and decapitated him. His head rolled, then plopped onto the frozen ground. Let's see if they can resurrect you now, dipshit. Liatra waved her hands overhead, and lilac tracers followed their motion. Whipping sounds came on the wind as the ranged attackers from the east sent projectiles toward us. Shoreen flew over our circle, covering us with transparent shields. The storm of hooves rushing toward us dulled, then evaporated when I stepped through the portal and returned home. Giles threw an arm around my neck in the great room. Nothing is ever easy with you. After all those decades hiding in Broomhill, you probably enjoyed every second of it. He nodded, then gave a rare laugh that revealed every tooth. Goddess damn me, it's true. But you know, they're coming here next. And aside from the 2nd Assassins Brigade, I have few I can call on to assist. We're preparing a siege on Trowlsby. The way portal is sacred ground to my people, so they won't leave. And our scouts at Greycutter wouldn't arrive in time. Well, good thing we're almost ready for an upgrade. Put on your strategy hat, my friend. I'll go talk to Pulo. When I entered the tunnel, my interface flashed a new message in accordance with the reactivation of a filter I'd disabled before we'd left the Foundation.
Amelia Horn's resurrection sickness has expired.
I laughed. 10. I reached with my free hand to grasp the red garment from the shelf, then pressed it to my face. Priya's scent lingered, but instead of the amazement that sometimes washed over me at Enora's realism, a pang of loss formed a lump in my throat. If any of my Light of Babylon guildmates heard how I bellyached over what they'd have thought of as a simple NPC, I'd never have heard the end of it. But I wouldn't have given a shit. My spouse was as real as Caitlin had been in my former world. Zarin snagged the cloth, then pulled it to his nose, emulating the way I'd sniffed it.
Mama?
I growled, then hitched him up a bit higher on my hip as the motion caused him to slip. Jesus, you're getting heavy. When I checked his stats, I noticed he'd gained 4 pounds in the couple days I'd been gone. At barely 10 weeks, he should still have been swaddled, and the nagging sense Enora had played a nasty little trick with his growth rate swelled. He really would be a teenager before I knew it. One more damned thing to deal with.
Does it smell like her?
An unmistakable Michonne accent inquired from behind. I sighed while my back was still turned, then pivoted to face Ticini. Hi.
Hello yourself, master.
She reached out with both hands and flicked her fingers in a beckoning gesture.
I've barely seen this sweet boy since I returned.
I handed him over, and Zarin went a little too willingly for my taste. She kissed his forehead.
You're getting heavy.
The boy clamped one hand onto her jutting chin, but her attention turned back to me as if she didn't notice.
I can't settle. The thought of Priya out there on her own and in no control of her own body haunts me. Mama?
Zarin said. Motherfucker. Could we avoid saying her name around my son until Val comes for him?
Why would Val come for him?
Because I'm going to be up all night, and he's not. She squinted in what I thought might be a touch of judgment. The Michonne was full of surprises lately, and I knew why. She was rattled. But one thing that had drawn me to her in the first place was the loyalty she exhibited when someone she cared about found themselves in peril. I wasn't about to hold it against her, no matter how frustrated I became. She wore pants that flared round the ankles and a semi-transparent tank that had me averting my eyes. Her defined shoulders reminded me of the first time I'd seen her. When Priya wore the dress I clutched in one hand and zapped the men surrounding the Michonne with a violence I hadn't expected from a low level. Ticini cut off my musings.
What is the state of the upgrade?
Everything's done. We're just waiting for the research timer to expire on the scribe's hut. Should happen in... I looked up and to the right. 7 hours.
Any word from the Trowlsby troops?
They haven't come yet. No indication of an invasion, but we're going to prepare anyway.
Of course, master. What else would we do?
She lowered her voice to a mutter.
Except go for Zaren's mother.
The boy's head tilted up.
Mama?
He understands you, and whether you want to or not, I have to face the minuscule possibility, it wasn't, that he might not see her again, so please.
You will not talk like this in my presence, Gemini Fowler.
She thrust a finger my way.
If I must go west alone and retrieve her, I will do it.
Again, I maintained a level tone. You will do no such thing.
Why? Do you threaten to uncheck your little box and keep me prisoner?
In a show of perfect timing, another Michonne rounded the corner and pranced into the vault to cut our argument off at the knees. Summoned laborer or not, the way she stopped and took a step back toward the heavy iron door said something about her intuition. Velitas could read a room.
Am I interrupting something?
Zaren cooed. Destiny turned, kissed my son a final time, then handed him over to Velitas.
Not at all. We were just discussing the return of someone important. Oh, I see.
She nodded enthusiastically.
Then with your leave, MG, I'll retire and tuck Zaren in.
Thank you, Val. The Michonne hurried away from the conflict, although I'd hoped she'd stayed longer and give Destiny a moment to calm her motor. Fill one hand with hope and the other with bullshit.
Well?
Destiny asked. You know I promised never to use that box with any companions. Free roam is a given, and you can come and go as you like. But this isn't the time to run off half-cocked and get yourself into more than you can handle. In case you haven't noticed, there's a civil war going on. A war we helped start, I might add. And it would be irresponsible to—
Don't lecture me about responsibility, Gemini.
I couldn't remember the last time she'd used my name twice in the same day, but I'd have been an idiot not to fathom what the tone meant. My usually stoic, sophisticated, loyal, and protective tank teetered on the brink, despite all we'd been through, or maybe because of it. The wisdom I'd become accustomed to from my companion was fading. Maybe I should spend attribute points on that. I didn't even think about laughing at the errant thought aloud.
Our responsibilities lie with Priya as much as anyone else.
She gave the kind of hard nod that said the discussion needed go no further, which was bullshit. Really? Tell me, Destiny, how many people live in Rubal?
What?
She pressed a hand to her chest as if I'd caught her off guard.
Why, millions. What has this to do with it?
You just said Priya must come first, right?
No. I said as much as anyone else. Equally.
Fine. Mince words. But I have a foundation with dozens of people working their asses off who are counting on us to get it upgraded so we can protect them from imminent assault. They're out there in the mornings learning combat techniques so they can fight for this place by our sides. Would Priya want me to cast them off, leave it to the 2nd Assassin's Brigade who don't even live here, and who already bailed us out once to defend them? I raised a finger. Or consider the people of Trowsby. The elves prepare a siege that will lock them inside the city for weeks, maybe months, maybe even a year. Shouldn't we be helping to figure out a way to shorten it?
Now, Gemini.
Oh, I'm not even fucking close to finished.
But you are.
I stepped back.
You pluck my strings like I'm some imbecile who is out of tune with the world around me. Except for a few days, I've spent most of your waking moments with you since the goddess dumped you into this world. If you would—
Did someone call me? A low, smooth, feminine voice spoke from the doorway. We wheeled to spy a woman 3 inches shorter than Destiny, dressed in fine white robes and wearing a circlet decorated with golden leaves. Caitlin? Destiny dropped to both knees, her face awash in horror.
Have I forsaken thee by arguing with your chosen? Get up, get up.
Caitlin waved a hand, but when Destiny didn't move, she spoke low. Rise. Her eyes flared at me. She cocked one eyebrow, then shrugged one shoulder.
My child?
I chuckled without engaging my vocal cords. Caitlin had played this role once before, and since she'd donned the get-up for this occasion, I'd play along. Get up, Destiny. She isn't going to cast you into the underworld for arguing with me. Destiny's timid rise gave little indication she believed me, but she eventually got to her feet.
Solara.
Her head whipped around. She lowered her voice to a whisper as if Caitlin couldn't hear it.
Is it proper to call her by name?
I grinned. Caitlin answered for herself.
It's fine, Desini. You honor me with your piety.
So she wasn't much of an actress, but her words seemed to penetrate Desini's fear.
Solara, how you honor me? You will want to talk with the Shenhua. I will leave you to it at once. Thank you, Desini.
The Blade Master hustled out of the vault. For the first time, I was glad to see her go. Guilt washed over me with the thought. The first thing that dawned on me once the Michonne was gone was Caitlin's solid form. Last time she'd appeared, it had been as a translucent apparition. As if she read my mind, she raised her arms.
Yes, you may hug your goddess.
If it hadn't been a virtual environment, I might have squeezed the life out of her. She returned the embrace with equal enthusiasm, and her words tickled the short hairs on my ears.
You've been having a time of it, huh?
I assume you got my message.
I did.
I stepped back. How much do you know?
One of our developers pops popcorn after his shift and watches your replays. He called me when he saw what happened to Priya a few hours ago, before you wrote the trouble ticket.
A few hours? Oh, right. The damned time conversion. For me, it had all happened the previous evening, and no matter how I kept myself busy, time dragged while I waited for a response.
Yeah, the time thing. I'm in my pod. Brand new model. It's badass. Maybe not as badass as actually having your consciousness transferred, but it's gotta be close. Can you believe the house Nokuro built?
I can believe the bitch that helped him set me up. The outburst came before I could consider it, but in display of her usual stoicism, Caitlin didn't even flinch.
Yeah, it's kind of a bitch. Sorry about all this.
Sorry? She raised one hand, leveled her gaze on mine, then spoke low and slow.
Gemini, try to remember that for the rest of my world, it's still a game. She's still an NPC, and the only reason the developer came to me in the first place is because it's like a cyberstream to him, and he feels like he's invested in your story. You're caught up in your new world, and I can sympathize, but all Priya will ever be to the outside world is a construct.
I drew a sharp breath, then gazed into the distance over her shoulder for a few seconds. No matter how that bit, she was right. But I no longer had an outside world, no place to retreat and gain perspective. Enora was it. Now I'm just confused. Shit. She dipped into my line of sight.
You okay?
Yeah, fine. My shoulders dropped as a deep breath slipped through my nostrils. Talk about a reality check.
It's not that you're entirely unreasonable. I'm not heartless, and I hope I didn't come off unsympathetic. You live here. You love an NPC, but it's not like she's just some NPC. I get it. These people are authentic as all get out.
Tell me about it.
But you might want to gain some perspective. Try to lighten your burden. Convince yourself that she's actually ones and zeros.
She grasped one hand, then led me out of the vault before I could respond.
Let's go to your meeting table and have a chat. Come on. It'll be fun if people pass by and see the goddess sitting there in all her glowing glory. Here.
She waved one hand and an aura of golden light surrounded her. You're a real shit.
Yeah, and you love me.
Always will. We strolled up the tunnel. How's Nokuro?
Oh, he's pissed. That seems to be the state of things these days. Sometimes I wish I'd stayed at the hospital.
Prior to joining her uncle's company, Caitlin was a nurse at Hanover Memorial. It seemed like ages ago, and in her time it'd only been about 6 weeks. Is the whole world going to shit?
No, everything else is on track. Runs smoother than a baby's behind. But Rubal is the persistent thorn in his side. That's one of the things I'm here to talk about.
We arrived in the dim great room, the lamps drilled into the stony walls burning low. I pulled out a chair so she could sit. Your Holiness.
Thank you.
She slid into it. Then I sat across from her.
I have no idea how you're going to react to this, so steel yourself just in case.
I steeled. Go for it.
Nokoru is locking Rubal down.
Considering recent tidings, the news had little impact. What do you mean exactly?
He's erecting a barrier through which only tradesmen and vendors can pass. Ships can come to ports for trade, but he's not letting combatants or players through. Rubal is now its own little world.
Why?
You have to ask?
When I raised both shoulders, she dropped her elbows on the table.
I have to remind myself you're not in the loop. Do you have a while?
I checked the timer on the scribe's hut research. Yep, I'm all yours.